Again, welcome to the Anti-Displacement Task Force meeting. We're going to go through some logistics and then we'll turn it over to Chair Eric Payne. I'm Sophia Pagalatis with the Planning and Development Department, City of Fresno. And I'll turn it over to Drew to tell you about translation.
Good evening, everyone. Drew Wilson, City of Fresno. Thank you for joining us tonight. I wanted to let everyone know that translation services are available tonight. Staff encourages all participants to join a language channel in order to listen to and to communicate with all participants. Once I activate the interpretation function, the interpretation globe should appear at the bottom of your screen. You will then select your preferred language, either Spanish or English, Spanish, Hmong, or Punjabi. If we could please have our Spanish interpreter unmute themselves and go over those same instructions.
Buenas noches, bienvenidos a la reunión de la Fuerza de Trabajo Antidesplazamiento. Tenemos interpretación disponible para ustedes el día de hoy en español, Hmong y Punjabi. Si ustedes necesitan la interpretación en español, en la parte baja de su pantalla van a ver el icono de un globo. Al presionarlo, seleccionen español. Si usted está utilizando un teléfono móvil o una tableta, las opciones son diferentes. Puede presionar su pantalla, va a haber 3 puntitos. Al seleccionar los 3 puntitos, seleccione interpretación de idioma, luego seleccione español y por último seleccione done, finalizar o terminar. Gracias.
Thank you. And if we could have our Hmong interpreter unmute themselves and go over those same instructions.
nhớ trong thế trong xe tại đó này tôi cũng trong sự thản nó đó cả bé khi nó ta bé giờ khi cho không xài luôn nó chỗ này bé chơi có này mù có ý không xài luôn không mà nó bé mua luồng kỳ luôn mẹ luôn không theo luôn khi tôi sợ đời những này sẽ tao luôn không muốn nhớ tao đại đó lúc tới khi họ cả muốn xài luôn không chỉ có giờ nó luôn không xài tao có nhớ tao lúc trong sự thản nó giờ có sử dụng thôi có lúc sẽ tao thằng nhớ tao đại đó lúc bé lúc我被路风风捏到捏路财节目捏到路忙我走。
Thank you. And if we could have our Punjabi interpreter unmute themselves and go over those same instructions.
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ, ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਵਿੱਚ। ਅਸੀਂ Zoom ਲਈ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਫੀਚਰ ਔਨ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਟ ਹੋਵੇਗੀ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼, ਸਪੈਨਿਸ਼, ਹਮਾਂਗ ਅਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਵਿੱਚ। ਜੇਕਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੰਪਿਊਟਰ ਤੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਕਰੀਨ ਦੇ ਨੀਚੇ ਗਲੋਬ ਦਾ ਸਾਈਨ ਦਿਖੇਗਾ। ਜੇਕਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਫੋਨ ਤੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਕਰੀਨ ਦੇ ਨੀਚੇ ਸੱਜੇ ਹੱਥ ਤੇ 3 ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨ ਦਿਖਾਈ ਦੇਣਗੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਲਿੱਕ ਕਰੋ ਅਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਹੋ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਸਿਲੈਕਟ ਕਰੋ। ਜੇਕਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਓਰੀਜਨਲ ਸਪੀਕਰ ਦੀ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਉਸ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਟਰ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਹੈ ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਵਕਤ ਓਰੀਜਨਲ ਆਡੀਓ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਊਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ ਜੀ।
Thank you. Now I'm going to go ahead and activate the function, and you guys should see the interpretation globe at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to give some folks to join the language channels. Remember, you click it and pick the language of choice. All right, we want to go to the next slide, Sophia. And additionally, I want to let everybody know that tonight's meeting is being recorded and publicly broadcasted. Participating in this meeting will be considered consent to the recording. The meeting is also being streamed on CMAC government channel, City of Fresno's Facebook page, and YouTube. Thank you. And finally, I want to go over some Zoom features. For those of you joining us tonight on the Zoom app, you may press the raise hand button to request to speak. If you're joining us by phone, please press *9 on your phone to raise your virtual hand. We also encourage all attendees to use the chat and or the Q&A function to submit questions or to make comments. I'll be monitoring them and informing Sophia and the board when a question comes up.
Thank you, Drew. All right, so that brings us to our official start of our agenda tonight, and I'll turn it over to Chair Eric Payne.
All right, thank you for that. At this moment, I just want to welcome everyone to our meeting this evening. Those viewers who are joining us virtually via YouTube, on our Facebook Live page, and those residents and stakeholders who have decided to join us in real time via Zoom. And then I want to take this opportunity to allow all of the staff that are on the Zoom to please introduce themselves, and then we will transition into roll call. And we'll start with, I guess, Sophia. Name and role.
Thanks, Chair Payne. Again, I'm Sophia Pagalatas, Planning Manager with the City of Fresno Planning and Development Department. And this evening, I am accompanied by Drew Wilson. Drew, you want to introduce yourself again?
Hey, everybody. Drew Wilson, Supervising Planner, the Long Range Planning Division for the City of Fresno.
And then I think we have Courtney.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Courtney Espinoza. I am the Program Implementation Manager for Transform Fresno.
All right. And I think we have IT on the call.
Actually, Drew is serving that function this evening, so we're all covered.
All right. We're ready to go. We're rocking and rolling tonight. So I know in the spirit of Halloween, I know we have 2 new commissioners this evening, and I will commit to not making this a scary experience as this is your first meeting, but probably not your first call to public service. So I want to yield the floor to Angie Nguyen for her to do her introduction and share with us who she is, who she represents, and what one thing that she's looking forward to in this experience.
Thank you, Chair Payne. Angie Nguyen with Fresno Housing, the Chief Program Officer, and I am grateful for being on this task force. And, you know, this is something that's really near and dear to my heart, both on a professional level and a personal level. So I think that as we look at issues of equity, I think looking at issues around displacement and not displacing families and businesses is real critical to the health of our community. So certainly hope to learn about that, but also contribute to the policymaking of that.
Thank you for that. And we are excited to have you join us in this discussion as we continue to move this work forward. I'm going to pass the mic over to Rick.
Oh, hi. Rick Ginder, owner of Ginder Development Company. We are a market rate apartment developer that's focused mostly in Fresno over the last 40 years. Also build in Tulare County, Madera County, Merced County. And I am the market rate developer on the committee. This is my first meeting, so I plan on learning a lot.
Great. Thank you for that, Rick. And now we'll have roll call by staff. Sophia?
Yes, thank you. I'll just start calling names here. Amber Crowell.
Present.
Thank you. Ana Lilia de Alba. Debbie Darden. Morgan Doizaki.
Present.
Rick Ginder.
Here.
Grecia Elenes.
Here.
Robert Fuentes. Mr. Fuentes told me that he had another commitment until 6:30, but that he was going to join late. So we'll keep an eye open for him. Catherine Forbes.
Yep, present.
Angelina Nguyen.
Present.
Hilda Lopez. And Eric Payne.
Present.
Thank you. And we have 2 alternates, Artie Padilla.
Here.
And Sharayla Nicholson. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 members present. 6 is a quorum, and plus we have an alternate to boot. So the task force members are here in a capacity to act. And we can move on to the next item.
All right. I'm going to have you do our agenda overview for this evening.
Okay. So we will move on. Our next item will be reviewing the meeting summary from October 12th, our last meeting. Considering any task force business or announcements. The task force will need to agree on its next meeting date. I will give number 6 a presentation on the top 10 items that were recommended last time in the preliminary report on here to stay public comment. We do not have the final report yet, but we'll get to that. Number 7 is a discussion about the procedure for recommending here to stay priorities. And then we finish with next steps, unscheduled oral communications, and close at 8 o'clock. And I have that in Spanish as well. Any questions?
No questions. I don't hear any. All right. Motion to approve our October 12th, 2021 minutes.
Sorry, I'm not seeing where I got the minutes.
You know, they were attached, they were part of your agenda, like in the same document. And so you might not know that you had them.
I see them now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, my apologies. We're kind of stealth.
Motion to approve the minutes from October 12th, 2021.
Amber Crowell, move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can you state your name?
Apologies, this is Gracia and I second the motion.
Thank you. It's been first by Amber and seconded by Gracia. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next, we have task force business announcements. Staff.
I think the main business will be in the next item, talking about dates. But I also did want to mention that the city is in the process of changing its computer platform for agendas. It was Granicus, then we went to PrimeGov, and now we're going back to Granicus. And we're going to take that opportunity to probably update the format of your agenda so that it will look more like a planning commission agenda. And as you can see, the items and the outline have been somewhat fluid. So I'm going to probably try to use something more standardized. And I just wanted to let you know that that was in the works. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Announcements are new from task force members. All right, hearing none, we'll move to the next item. We need to solidify item 5. We need to agree on our next meeting date. The proposed date is Thursday, November 18th at 6:40.
And Chair Payne, can I cut in for a minute? I forgot one of my announcements. This is the
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. This was another one that always appears in my presentation somewhere, but it's just a reminder that the city does have emergency rental assistance funding It's the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, or ERAP, and you can call 621-6801 if you want to know more about it. I just wanted to make sure to keep getting the word out on that.
Yes, because we want residents to take full advantage of all of the resources that are being deployed to help residents through any COVID recovery effort. So please check it out. All the listeners on YouTube, Zoom, and Facebook Live. Next, we will solidify our next meeting date. The proposed date, again, is November 18th, 2021. Commissioners, please check your calendars. If you have any conflicts, please share them now. If there are none, we will agree on this date.
Actually,
yes.
Could I chime in here for a moment?
Yep.
What I wanted to let the task force and the public know is that we had hoped at this meeting to have the final public comment report on the Here to Stay report, essentially. And you saw the preliminary results at the last meeting. The final results are not ready yet. And so that's why we're asking you to schedule another meeting. For the new members here, this task force meets on an as-needed basis, but that is subject to task force members. So eventually, if you wanted to establish a schedule, you could do that. But right now, what we're wanting you to do is to look at a future meeting where that final public comment report and final priorities on Here to Stay would be presented and available to you. So I'd actually, November 18th looks like a reasonable date. It's a Thursday. You can see it here. It's the Thursday. It's a week before Thanksgiving. However, I would also like to ask that the task force designate another date that's a couple weeks after that, just to provide a buffer in case we can't get the report to you on time at that on that date either. We want to give everyone enough advance time to be able to review it and really consider it. So my recommendation would be November 18th and December 2nd, both Thursdays, but please discuss.
I'm sorry,
All
you
right.
mean December 2nd? December 2nd?
Yes, December 2nd. Do you have a proposed time? Is it going to be 6:40, Sophia?
If 6 p.m. still works for everyone, that's when I propose it would be.
Okay.
Looks like Grecia has her hand up.
Go ahead, Grecia.
I just wanted to note that December 2nd is a city council hearing date, and just, wanting to be conscious of Zoom fatigue in case folks do plan to join the second, for staff, attendees, and, fellow task force members. So wondering if it'd be like thoughts on, maybe doing it the 1st, December 1st, if that is an option for others.
I can just add that the council is not, even though it's on their calendar, December 2nd, my understanding is they're not meeting that day, they're meeting the 9th.
Okay, well, if then that's the case, then I think the 2nd could work perfectly fine, as long as, there is no city council hearing that day.
All right. Any others?
Rick does have his hand up.
Go ahead, Rick.
I am not available on the 2nd of December.
Okay. All right. Any other members not available on the 2nd?
Amber, do you still have your hand up?
I did, but not about that.
Oh, okay. All right. Is there availability on the 3rd, Sophia?
The 3rd is a Friday, but
Oh, I'm sorry. Or the 6th or the 7th. Let's do the 7th. How about the 7th?
this group has recently met on a Tuesday, so that could be it's certainly workable for staff.
All right, so if there are no objections to the 7th, and everybody is available on the 7th?
No, sorry, I teach on Tuesday nights. I can't do.
Oh, okay. What about the 8th? Does the 8th work? It's a Wednesday.
That is a non-planning commission Wednesday, so that could work for us.
And I have two raised hand from Grecia and a raised hand from Amber. If it's something different, Amber.
It was just, well, my internet cut out, so I'm not sure what Catherine said, but it was a question about the time on the 7th.
Oh, okay. I see another raised hand from Grecia.
So I was taking it down to allow Amber to ask her question. I think I'd like to just reintroduce the first, if it's a realistic time frame for staff to potentially get us. I think, you know, the sooner we can, if we need to push the date, the sooner we can do this, the better, you know, given the urgency of the current housing crisis. I would like to provide the council with recommendations as soon as possible.
Okay. Up for discussion. The new proposed date is.
Do we know when the report might be ready? Because I'm also concerned. I want to make sure that there's plenty of time for us to review the final report. And given that that week before is a holiday week, I know I, for one, will be out that week. So, you know, if we received the report, say by the 15th, and that still provides a sufficient time to review it before coming into a meeting on December 1st. But I just want to make sure that we're cognizant of giving the task force commissioners time to review. So is there any time frame any anticipated time frame by which we should receive that?
We'll let staff respond. Go ahead, Sophia.
Thank you. I would say the earliest it would be ready would be the week of November 15th. That would be the earliest that it would be ready. It might take, you know, another week to get it finalized and ready for production.
Got it.
And of course, that next week is Thanksgiving week. So, yeah, it makes it tricky. We're getting into that season.
Okay, if there are no objections to December 1st,
Eric?
the new. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, Morgan has his hand up, and Gracie, I don't know if you still have.
All right, we'll go to Morgan, and Grecia will circle back with you. Morgan?
Yeah, so on the minutes from last meeting, it showed that the report is supposed to go to council in December. Is that still the plan, even though we weren't able to discuss it today? Yeah.
Do you like me to respond to that, Eric?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so later in the meeting, I have a time frame, but it was very likely, even in our current time frame, that the council consideration was going to end up in January. And so under this scenario, whether the task force considers the report on November 18th or later, that probably puts council consideration in January. Either way, whether it's November 18th or later.
Gotcha. All right, and I had another question from Grecia with a raised hand. Go ahead.
No apologies. I forgot to lower my hand.
No worries. Up for discussion and to finalize our next meeting date to review the report is December 1st. If there are no objections, December 1st at 6 p.m. See you there. All right. Next on the agenda, we have a Number 6, right? Presentation. Oh, yes. Presentation and a community study session on the top 10 preliminary policies from 10/12 at 6:45 p.m. And I think we're on schedule. We're ahead of schedule, so perfect. You got some extra time. Not too much time, but you got a little extra time. We want to give it to the public. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we might need that extra time because this next item that I'm going to present, it's meant to be more interactive. I'm going to give you the same old background that you hear every time because I want to make sure that any new members of the public that are here with us have some context, and then we'll hop into kind of the discussion items. So why are we here discussing displacement? For a number of reasons, but because when the city adopted its general plan in 2014, that plan called for new investment in historically underinvested neighborhoods. And so the concern was that along with new investment can come displacement. So several city plans included policies in them that called for addressing displacement. The Downtown Neighborhoods Community Plan had such a policy. The housing element did, and the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan did. These plans all called for creation of this task force, an anti-displacement task force, studying of displacement, the causes of displacement, and then recommending policies that could help reduce and prevent displacement. Also, the Transform Fresno grant was secured by the city of Fresno, Transformative Climate Communities, in 2018. And that grant requires a displacement avoidance plan because that program brings lots of investment into Southwest Fresno, Chinatown, and downtown. So, as I stated, all of the policies basically are driving this activity on the part of the Anti-Displacement Task Force to work with residents, community organizations, experts on displacement, business owners and property owners to study and track displacement and then to identify actions and policies to reduce or prevent it. So the main tool that the task force has been looking at for the last several months since June is a report prepared by the Thrivance Group called Here to Stay. And that report was circulated for the public to review from June to September of this last year. It was prepared by the Thrivance Group, and the report describes displacement in Fresno, and it also recommends 46 different policy ideas on how to reduce or prevent it. It's organized into 7 different categories or policy bundles to absorb all these ideas more easily. And there has been quite a bit of outreach around the report. Here are the 7 different policy bundles or categories. And during the 90-day public comment period, not only was the report made available online, of course, it was distributed to about 8 locations in Southwest Fresno, downtown, and Chinatown in information hubs. Surveys and comment cards were made available both online and in real life. And 4 community study sessions were held to try and look more closely at the policies. So these were the community study sessions that were held, and we thank you for those of you that are here tonight that participated. Your input is being incorporated into the final report, so we're really grateful that we had that, and we spent a lot of time breaking out into small groups and considering the different policies and asking questions. So I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone that the Here to Stay report is available on the Transform Fresno website. It's at transformfresno.com/here-to-stay with hyphens between the words, and perhaps one of our staff can drop that in the chat for you. And now that brings us to what we heard on the October 12th meeting. And that meeting, by the way, is available at the Transform Fresno website if you'd like to look at it, if you haven't had a chance to review it. But basically, Dr. Destiny Thomas from the Thrivance Group, the author of the Here to Stay report, compiled all the public comment that she and the city had received on the report, and she reviewed the preliminary findings. She mostly at the last meeting was working from the 120 or so surveys that were submitted. She did not at that meeting incorporate the input from the letters that had been received. So it was kind of a focused look at the surveys. And these are the preliminary recommendations that were identified from the surveys. So what this presentation is now going to do is just walk through in a little more detail these top 10. And I will defer to Chair Payne as to how you want to handle it. Since we have a little more time, I'm perfectly happy to, I have a slide for each one. I'm perfectly happy to put them up and then pause for task force members or public to discuss and ask questions. I probably won't have all the answers, but we can work on getting the answers prior to when the task force would be considering these items in their action. So Chair Payne, would you like me to pause after each one or halfway through, or would you like to wait till the end before discussion?
Wait till the end before discussion.
Okay. Then that is what we will do. So the first one is a Here to Stay homeowner and renter assistance program with the goal of helping low-income households remain housed. The program would have two facets. The first one would be supporting homeowners, first-time home buyers with down payment and closing cost assistance, existing homeowners with renovations and energy upgrades, and then renters would have short-term assistance with rent. And I believe that that the policy would advocate for possibly more than short-term assistance with rent. And of course, as I just mentioned, the city has recently established the ERAP, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, which is COVID related. So that's one. The next one is a Here to Stay security deposit program with the goal of ensuring that renters' deposits are well managed. This would basically have either the city or a third party collect all of the security or first month's rent deposit that a renter would normally hand over to a landlord, and that third party would keep the funds in an interest-bearing account. And then in order to allow use of those funds for repairs, that third party would need to verify with the landlord. And then at lease termination, the remaining balance could be returned to the renter or deposited on their behalf to another rental unit. An innovative aspect of this program could be that if the renter wishes to apply the balance of their deposit on a down payment for a new home, the city or the third party could match the funds. So that is just a very brief description of that program. And I do have a resource here, which hopefully staff can drop this link in the chat for you. It is an article from the publication Shelter Force that describes this program in England. This program is in use in England. And we're looking for more local examples. If any of the task force members hear of those, please let us know. Fair chance housing is another policy that is rising to the top of the list with the goal of ensuring access to housing for those with criminal records. Data show that these programs can reduce homelessness, and there are examples of these programs in California and in other places in the United States. I believe there's one in New York. Background checks would be prohibited as a condition of lease or mortgage, and I'm not sure if these programs actually include the mortgage piece or just the lease. One issue with just relying on background checks is that they often are incorrect. So that puts people at a real disadvantage if the background check is incorrect. So a resource on this that was recommended by the Thrivance group is fairchancehousing.org. So we can also drop that in the chat for you. The next program, and I do see we have Kathy Omachi has her hand raised. Ms. Omachi, if you could hang on to that, we will, I know Eric will call on you when we're done getting through these policies. There's 10 of them. So the eviction right to counsel, the goal is to reduce displacement by providing legal counsel to tenants facing eviction. And I think all of us are fairly familiar with what this program would entail. It would provide legal representation to residents who are being evicted. It recommends establishing a pilot program immediately, and the city does have an eviction protection program. The city, that program is focused on just unlawful evictions. So clients that would approach or renters that would approach the city, their case is evaluated by city staff. And if it is unlawful, an unlawful eviction, then it receives the legal assistance. This program proposes that legal assistance be provided to all tenants being evicted, regardless of whether it's legal or not, or that perhaps that evaluation occur later in the process. This program is an independent youth coordinator to address specific housing needs of youth. The suggestion is to create an organization that provides added support to youth, especially when, you know, we have a lot of foster children who age out of the foster care system, and then they really have a hard time finding housing. There might be domestic violence issues. They often have trouble with income verification, and they might be attending school and working. So just creating this position that could help youth in this kind of transition to really get into some secure housing. And the suggestion is to create a verification process through a social service agency. So the social service agency would vouch for the youth, that they would be able to pay rent, maintain a job, etc. So that is the suggestion there. Hold on just one moment. I'm having, there we go. This one is, the suggestion is an environmental justice and climate resiliency planning recommendation, and that would be to protect Fresno residents from a natural disaster or extreme weather. So the suggestion here is to initiate an environmental justice emergency management plan. And the 7th recommendation is to establish a community land trust. We did look at these in our community study session in a bit more detail. We had a video. A community land trust is basically a community organization, a nonprofit that purchases land and owns land, but sells the housing that's on the land at a reduced price. And then a buyer can actually buy the home, get into the home for a reduced price. And when they want to sell it, they can sell it at a profit, just not a windfall. So they're able to realize a little bit of return on investment, probably not as much as a non-community land trust property. There are at least 16 community land trusts in California and 270 in the United States, so they are definitely happening. And there is a new one that has recently been created in Southeast Fresno. So I am having a little bit of a technical issue over here, but that's okay. I think you all can see my screen still. Is that right? Yes, good. Okay. The next policy is to increase local hire and living wage. This one is, I think it pretty much speaks for itself. It would stipulate that 51% of hours spent on local contracts for revitalization, development, and transportation planning projects would go to local residents. It would apply to all construction and consulting projects over $100,000 in value. And the policy suggests a fee be charged for noncompliance to fund other anti-displacement efforts, and wages should be above minimums. The next one is rent stabilization, conversion restrictions, and affordability in perpetuity designations. That's a tongue twister. And the goal here is to moderate rent increases to reduce displacement. And this has several facets to it. One is third-party tracking of affordability expirations. So the city has a stock of, I mean, the city doesn't own it, but within the city of Fresno, there is a stock of affordable housing units that are kept that way because of agreements or covenants that are recorded on the property. And those have anywhere from a 30 to a 55-year timeline. And the city tracks those to make sure that we are aware when they expire. There are noticing regulations to the tenants if they are going to expire. And we try to monitor that and see if there's a way that when they are going to expire that they can turn over and maintain the affordability, but the city doesn't really have the legal grounds to insist that that happen. Third-party tracking of the affordability expirations may provide a little bit more lead time on some of those. Also, a system for notification of condominium conversions so that if a rental unit is going to convert to a condominium, there's a better system of notification. Our development code does require it. Considering a Community Opportunity to Purchase Act program that would give a tenant the right of first refusal to purchase their unit, and to implement a rent stabilization program in Fresno. And this Shelter Force article talks about rent stabilization, and I apologize, I didn't provide that to my staff to drop in the chat. And if I do it, goodness only knows how tangled up I might get. But if you want to take a screenshot of that, feel free to do so. And then this is the last one, the creation of an anti-displacement zone. 10-year zoning layer would be added to the neighborhoods surrounding new luxury developments and other forms of development known to rapidly increase housing costs. The area should be designated an automatic anti-displacement zone, and parameters should be put in place to ensure that zone does not experience concentrated and excessive amounts of potentially harmful development. So those are the 10 recommendations that were in the preliminary report. Probably the final report is not going to have all of these, and they might be in a different order. But since they rose to the top, it thought it would, make sense to bring these tonight and offer a chance for Q&A and discussion.
All right, I'm gonna take it to the public, and we'll do public Q&A, and then I'll bring it back to the dais for board discussion.
We had one question entered in from during the presentation, and I have two hands up. So I'll go for the first one. Catherine Welton asked, what is certain low income?
All right. Sophia, you want to respond?
I think I can clarify that in general, when we're talking about low income people or households, we're talking about a household whose income is 80% or below of area median income.
All right, next raised hand or next question in the queue.
Yep, we have Christine Barker. I'm gonna allow you to speak.
All right. Good.
All right, Ms. Barker, if you could just state your name, your organization.
Yes, my name is Christine Barker. I don't know. I'm I guess I'm sort of here on maybe it's best if I'm an individual, actually, so I don't have to figure out which hat I'm wearing. A resident of District 1, if that matters. Yeah, so I have two questions. Maybe I missed this at the beginning, so sorry if you know the answers. How were these top 10 policies identified that Sophia went through tonight? And then my other question, just while I'm unmuted, is whether there's any conversation around foreclosure prevention or like protecting existing homeowners, or if this is not the place for that. Happy to hear all possible answers. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And I'll let staff respond.
Okay, thanks, Christine. No, those are great questions. So the 10 policies that we were looking at tonight were those that rose to the top in surveys that were conducted on the Here to Stay report. So the Here to Stay report was released for public comment in June, along with surveys of reader preferences of the policies once they read the report. And so those are the preliminary results of the public input. It only includes surveys. We have other inputs to that, so we're still expecting a final report in November. But that's where that came from. And foreclosure protection, I think, is totally relevant. I know that this group and the people who have participated in this process are concerned about homeowner protections as well as renter protections. So, thank you.
All right, next question, Drew.
All right, I have Kimberly McCoy. I'm gonna allow you to speak.
All right, Ms. McCoy, please state your name, address, or organization you're representing.
Good evening, everyone. Kimberly McCoy, Project Director, Fresno Building Healthy Communities. I would like to say thank you, Sophia, for that presentation. I have a question. I see that it's only 10 recommendations that you showed on the slide, and that the city is possibly only going to implement 3 of them from the slides that you've shown. Can you tell me, is there any, are they going to implement all recommendations? And if you know when that's going to happen, I think that would be beneficial to the anti-displacement plan if all recommendations were implemented instead of just the top 3. Thank
you, Kimberly. You want me to respond to that, Eric?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Yes. So the displacement avoidance plan requirements that are related to the TCC or the Transform Fresno project require that at least 3 policies be seriously pursued by the council by the time that Transform Fresno grant ends. So that's in 2024. So staff believes that the council will consider and they will choose priorities. We have directed this process because there are 46 different ideas. Staff believes that it's going to be helpful, much more helpful for the decision makers if they can see the clear priorities as far as people that have commented on this, people that live these experiences, what are their top needs. And of course, the Anti-Displacement Task Force, their recommendation is going to be meaningful. I would say, there's not an official limit to what the council might want to do, but any planning that we do, we try to distill what the community priorities are, because we feel that that's really important in policymaking. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but
I understand, but I have a follow-up question. Does
Okay.
the city doesn't have an anti-displacement policy in place, correct? So this
it
would
does.
be it. It does?
It does. As a matter of fact, it has an anti-displacement policy in the Downtown Neighborhoods Community Plan, the housing element.
No, not in the plans that have been recently, but before the TCC, wasn't this a requirement for the city to create an anti-displacement, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes. So in not only in the TCC, but the Downtown Neighborhoods Community Plan and the housing element both called for the establishment of a task force and studying displacement and taking actions to prevent it if displacement was found. So those documents kind of have a looser, they don't say you shall, adopt 3. They have a looser language that basically says if you have displacement happening, find a way to fix it.
So based on those plans, basically saying that if you have displacement happening, find a way to fix it, wouldn't it be wise to recommend all the recommendations from the anti-displacement plan presentation that you presented to avoid displacement?
I'll leave that up to the task force. I believe that the policies that are prioritized would have more weight than recommending the entire thing. And I would think that there could be some discernment about some of those 46 policies maybe not being as appropriate for Fresno. So, I would look to the task force to ultimately consider what is the wisest approach. And as a matter of fact, you're kind of segueing into our next item, which is how are you going to pick these, how are you going to make your recommendation? What are you going to base it on?
Sorry, but
no, that's okay. No, that's fine. It's getting us ready.
Well, I'll open the door for that.
All right. Thank you, Ms. McCoy. Any other testimony from the public, Mr. Wilson?
Yes, we have 4 hands raised, 5 hands raised. They're popping up. David, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself and you can speak if I can get a hold of my mouse. There we go.
All right, David, name and address, please.
Okay, so my name is David Tittle and I am a small landlord. I only own 8 apartments. And I did write a letter to the mayor, to my councilman, and several other people. This scares the hell out of me as a landlord, frankly. The thought of the city holding rent deposits, good Lord. No background checks for tenants, that violates Megan's law. I got legal aid for evictions, whether they're justified or not. When they're justified, to provide legal aid for evictions for somebody that's destroyed your property. I know Rick only because I've worked with him in the past before I retired. I supplied product to Rick. I'm sure this scares the heck out of you, some of these proposals. And my thought is that a developer just simply would not develop in that area to avoid this type of additional restrictions, additional rules and regulations that do nothing but raise rent.
Thank you, David. I didn't get your
I'm not
address
done.
for the record. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
They talked about supplying a living wage. Well, any public works project has Davis-Bacon wages on it, and you've got guys that go make, say, a we'll say a manual laborer that's making $15 or $18 an hour, and Rick, you can correct me on this if you will, that they go to $45 an hour plus working on a public works project because of Davis-Bacon. Are you proposing to suspend that for these type of projects so they can be built?
All right, we're going to allow staff an opportunity to respond, and then we'll put, go ahead, Sophia.
I think the one clarification I could add is that with the fair housing, fair chance housing, Megan's Law is still in effect. So it does provide an exception for Megan's Law. Other than that, I think Mr. Tittle was expressing his opinion, so I don't have anything to add.
It's not my opinion. It is my experience. I can't imagine being a landlord in the city if some of these go back into effect. I will sell my property probably to an out-of-towner that will, aid in what the Fresno Apartment Association referred to as the ghettoization of Fresno.
All right, thank you, David. We appreciate that. If you have no other questions.
I do not.
All right, thank you for your testimony. Drew, next.
We have Brandy. Brandy, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself.
Hi. I had a couple questions with that. That was similar to the one.
All right, Brandy, if you want to give us your name and your address for the record.
Brandy, 713 East Andrews Avenue. I was just wanted to piggyback on the one from I think McCoy's stuff regarding the other items. I was curious to know if there's any possibility of being able to, even if they're not priorities, be able to have a report with, reasons why there may be people in the community had favored the reason why they're important, both from the report as well as from the public, as well as possibly include. I heard some really great conversations and thoughts over the workshops you guys did over the month, which I really appreciate. And I know there's a lot of thoughts for things, and I recognize that because, 10, there's nearly 50, and there's 10 that there's some that are significant, but not necessarily have shown as much in the their surveys. And I know that you're also looking at other feedback to include that, but also recognize that there will be ones that would be extremely helpful to our community that wouldn't make the top 10, including ones that might not necessarily affect as many people who might have done the surveys, such as those who are unhoused and those who might not have as much access to these things and stuff. So I was wondering if, as well as similar to her, about the potential for, based off of the feedback and information the task forces had, if there is a way to be able to, even with the priorities, be able to share things that the Thrivance group has found in the research, as well as community members that have spoken up about items that would be significant, especially considering that some of these are interrelated, and we noticed that there's some of them that may not be as high priority, but together they make the high priority ones, or together, they pair together to make the effort more successful. And wondering if there is a way to be able to have a kind of a robust one, with, I understand the idea of priorities and focusing, but be able to have that as a way, as a guidance, and possibly show reasoning based from the community and also from the research of why these should be considered, even if they're not the top 10.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. I'm going to allow staff an opportunity to respond.
Sure. Thank you, Randy. So first, to clarify, we will be forwarding the full Thriven's report along with the public comment report to the Planning Commission and the City Council. So those bodies will see the full 46 recommendations. As far as what the task force wants to do and how they want to set up their recommendation, that's really up to the task force. Staff would recommend that you prioritize, and we have a public comment report that's going to tell you what the community said, at least the community that was able to comment. But yeah, I'll say that the task force can deliberate on how they want to act on this, how they want to structure their recommendations.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brandy. Mr. Wilson, next comment from the public.
Absolutely. So Christina, I'm going to let a couple folks who haven't had a chance to speak yet go first. So Adriana, I'm going to allow you to speak.
All right.
Or Catherine, I apologize.
All right, Catherine, for the record, if you could just state your name and your address, please. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Welton, and I do live on 1457 B Street. I do live on the west side. And my question to you or to whomever, it is great that you're doing this type of program for people, but what is the accountability on their end? I'm hearing a lot of stuff going out for them, but what are they giving back to us? Because I'm talking about like, they need to clean up their credit. To be better people, you have to clean up yourself too. So they need to clean up some of their stuff in the background. And they will be able to live somewhere. And after learning all this, they'll be able to live somewhere and be accountable for themselves. So what I see where I live at is a lot of people not being accountable, a lot of homelessness sitting around here. I want to know, it is a nice program, but what do the people need to get back to this program? Because I'm not hearing anything about what the people need to get back.
Absolutely. Have you had an opportunity to review the entire report, the Here to Stay report that we've provided for public review? Ms. Walton?
This is my first night here. I heard of that report. I will be reading that report. So I guess at your next meeting, maybe I have a little bit more understanding where you're going with this.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to take some time, it's on the city website. And I'll also drop my email address in the chat box for you. If you have any questions and you want to reach out and circle back before our next meeting, happy to take any of your questions.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Ms. Walton.
Thank you.
Next public testimony, Mr. Wilson.
All right, we have Adriana.
Hey, Ms. Adriana Rivera, if you want to state your name and your address for the public record.
Adriana Rivera, and I'm actually here representing a developer. And so I do have a question regarding the deposit program. Have you guys taken in consideration how many days or additional days we would have to leave a empty vacant home while we waited for funds or for the city's approval for us to get it ready for the next person?
All right, thank you for your question, Ms. Rivera. I'll allow staff an opportunity to respond.
Thank you. I think it would be, so it sounds like what you're saying is that you believe there would be additional delay in turnover of renting units. Is that correct? Sounds like we are open to any information that you would have about that, and we'll note it as a concern.
All right, thank you, Ms. Rivera. Next public commenter, Mr. Wilson.
Absolutely, we have Janie.
And Janie, before you state your name and address for the record, Mr. Wilson, how many people are in the queue?
We have one more after this.
All right, thank you, go ahead. You're muted.
Hi there, Janine and Kosi, Regional Advisor with Faith in the Valley. 5241 North Maple. That's the address for Fresno State, where I also teach. And I just wanted to add my name to the other folks who were lifting up the need for this to be seen as a comprehensive set of solutions, especially when we look at the report and we see the background of what it has taken for us to get here. We should be looking at this report as a mandate for implementing all of these solutions. And the conversation should be around which ones will we prioritize and kind of scaffold out over a 3 to 5 and 10-year kind of period. So I just want to urge the task force to kind of hopefully take that as the direction. I do appreciate all of you, the time, your effort, everything that you are contributing to this really important work, and also to the presentation tonight. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is, if we're only going to look at 10 priorities, then please develop a more thorough and comprehensive plan, because I think there's only about 125-ish folks who've been able to respond to the survey so far. And we really need to get a lot more community input, especially when we look at that background of what got us here, voices of people who have been directly impacted by the longstanding injustices that got us here. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Nkosi. We've definitely taken note of your testimony. I would also welcome an opportunity for Faith in the Valley to partner with us as we move into the next phase of this conversation. And if you would like, you're happy to drop your name and address or contact information to staff, and we can circle back with you as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Wilson, next public commenter.
All right, Chair Payne, just to update, we have 2 hands up and then 1 written response. So I'm going to allow Bob to speak.
All right. Thank you, Bob. If you want to state your name for the record and your address, please. You're muted.
Sorry, thank you very much. My name is Bob McCloskey. I am a member of the Fresno Homeless Advocates, and I'm also currently vice president of the Fresno Homeless Union. I currently live outside of the city, and I just wanted, shortly outside of the city, I just wanted to have some input tonight on the issue of local hire. I do advocacy, and I also do outreach to the homeless community. And, I've been out there working with people, helping to build some structures, and also working directly with some of the homeless folks. And I was surprised, to learn that so many folks have construction experience, especially some of the younger men that are out there, and they just have had certain circumstances that have led them to the unfortunate circumstance of being unhoused. We all know that the current vacancy rate for single unit apartments for, is about 0.06%, less than 1%. So I would urge all members of the community to consider how to really resolve the question of homelessness rather than trying to blame people for their unfortunate circumstances. Let's look at real solutions. One of them would be to hire the homeless for these construction projects that the mayor is proposing. He's talking about building tiny home villages. This is an ideal solution for folks to be involved in building their own housing. And basically, I think unless we address the problems of chronic homelessness, and one of those issues is the inability to get hired once you are on the streets. And we all know that first and last, and the cost of housing and getting all that money together just to get an apartment is a lot of money. So one of the first steps is to try to get employment. Whether folks are living in shelters or otherwise, they can seek employment. And I think the city and county can provide that opportunity. And thank you. I hope that's considered in this report. I did want to commend the group on the recommendations that are made. I think a lot of work went into it. I do agree with other folks that, you know, it would be great to get larger input from a larger community. I was able to participate in some of the workshops, and I do appreciate all you're doing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. McCloskey. Your testimony has been into the public record. Next, Drew, Mr. Wilson.
Absolutely. So we have an anonymous attendee who entered a question. I will read that and then go to the hand raising. As a property owner investor in the area, I do believe there will be concerns from quote unquote reasonable landlords who take pride in their properties, especially when the issue of rent control comes into play and other issues as well. Yes, I did read the entire report. I do believe there are wonderful tenants, and I have had many, but there are also nightmare tenants, and my concern is where landlords will be protected from the nightmare tenants. I see the protections for tenants, but I did not see protections for landlords in the report.
All right. We'd like to thank that anonymous submission person for their submission. Your statement has been read for public record and for public testimony. And we will now transition to the next public commenter if there is one.
There is. So we have Greg. Greg, I'm going to allow you to speak.
All right, Greg, if you tell us your name and your address for the record.
Thank you, Chair Payne. Greg Terzakis, California Apartment Association, 516 West Shaw. I just heard you extend an invitation to partner with Faith in the Valley moving forward with the Anti-Displacement Task Force. I was wondering if we would be extended the same invitation since we represent about half the rental units in the city of Fresno.
Greg. So relative to the statement, we were extending. She was asking or requesting additional outreach. And so if there is a stakeholder group that you would like
Absolutely.
the city to connect with, we're happy to connect you with staff. And if you host a meeting between now and then, and you'd like either myself or our staff to come out and share, we're happy to do that. And so if you want to connect with Sophia offline, I know you've participated in a number of the other sessions as well. As always, we welcome both your feedback and those that you represent. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Payne. I would just like to say that staff has done a phenomenal job with this task force. It's not easy, but they've done a great job, and it's been a pleasure working with them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next public commenter, Mr. Wilson.
All right, Chair Payne, we have Sharon Williams. I'm going to allow you to speak.
Yes, Ms. Williams, for the record, if you want to state your name and your address.
Sharon Williams, 2255 South Plumas. I live in the Legacy Communes Apartments, California, Walnut and Plumas. Did you get that?
We did. Thank you so much. And if your testimony or question.
Just a statement, okay? First of all, thank you all for your hard work. I've missed a couple of meetings, but thank you. I'm trying to understand the land grant, the ownership. And I believe when Sophia was talking, the statement was that the person will own. Help me understand this, because I know a lot of people not understanding that term. So we're going to own the house, but not the property. So if I die and I want to give this to my children, what's the process? Or can I do that? Can I leave this to my kids? Or is this going to go back to the community? I don't know what you call it, vault, but that's not what I really want to say. But you understand, the control of the community. So how is this going to relate to a family that want to buy property but want to leave it to their children? Is this going to be anti that family legacy, or are we going to be able to do that? Two, I hope that this helps curtail when developers come in here and Southwest Fresno and they build and they say this is a low income housing. And then year after year, the rental rate moves from low income to medium until the low income family could no longer afford to stay. And what was started out and told the public that they would be a low-income housing. People are leaving because they're being priced out of apartment that's supposed to be low income. So those are my two statements. Give me some clarification if you can. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Williams. I'll allow staff an opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Williams. I am not an expert on community land trusts, so I think if there's anyone here that is, I would welcome their input. I believe that that the asset of a home in a community land trust, just like it can be sold and a modest profit made, I would imagine that it could be passed on to heirs, but I don't know. So that is something that I would need to look up and respond to you and respond to the group at a future meeting. Good question. Anybody else know about that? Any raised hands? No.
We'll allow you an
Yes.
opportunity. We'll allow you an opportunity to do some discovery and circle back with the commission. Ms. Williams, thank you for your question.
Okay.
All
Thanks.
right. Next public commenter, Mr. Wilson.
All right, Chair Payne, this is the last one. It's a comment from Joseph Vega, tuning in from 93702, and I would agree that the implementation should be as comprehensive as possible, especially factoring in Fresno's unhoused population, as many have been directly impacted by the effects of rising costs and inaccessible housing, with special consideration of moratoriums and UI no longer being available to many.
All right, thank you for that public testimony. Your statement has been read into the record, and we will take that testimony under advisement. We appreciate your time and that you've invested from the general public in engaging in this conversation, this important dialogue. We know many of you could be with your families this evening, but you chose to be with us. And so now I will close public comment and transition back to the dais, the virtual dais, and open it up for discussion among commissioners. Just to create a little order, if you please raise your hand and we will acknowledge you and to engage in the conversation. Commissioners. All right, I see Dr. Forbes, go ahead.
I appreciate the comments about sort of, like trying to get the whole package of proposals going forward. And I think that, one of the things we'll have to decide as a task force is trying to how to be strategic. So for instance, if the state mandate is that you have to adopt 3 policies, we don't want those 3 policies to be the ones that are least expensive, right? So I mean, there's a way that you can kind of, that we want to stack it so that we're not giving city council a kind of an easy way out. I'll just put my cards on the table, right? You don't want to give them an easy way out to choose the things that are least expensive and least easy to and most easy to do. So, and then the other comment I would make is that there's a tension, trying to figure out sort of, do you look at the policies and then how do you look at those policies in relationship to specific populations? And some of those, I can't remember, I'm sorry I don't remember which person commented, but trying to look, I think it was Brandy actually, who said, trying to get these like a more comprehensive, like a comprehensive package on some items that addresses, a certain set of problems. And I think we can definitely do that. It's just going to be how we're going to be strategic on it. So it's really helpful to hear from folks in the way that they're thinking about it.
All right, thank you. I'm going to shift over to Grecia. I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I want to echo what Catherine just shared. Just appreciate everyone's thoughts and comments, and like the looking at it really comprehensively of this is not an easy task. This is why California is in a housing crisis, and it's not just one solution that's going to resolve all the issues that California, let alone the city of Fresno, has. My question is more so just clarification from staff. Would the task force recommendations be able to, or is it expected to include actual action items, including timelines and whatnot?
Sophia?
Yes, I think that they could. I mean, I think they could if the task force wanted to try and recommend timelines. The only difficulty with that is that we have not really dug deep on any of these policies to see what it would really take to implement them. And I would not like to have city staff bound to a timeline that is unrealistic because we haven't said, well, to do this one, you need to do these 25 steps. And, so that would be my only concern about it. But maybe short-term, medium-term, long-term, and defining short-term means 1 to 3 years, medium-term means 3 to 6 years, and long-term, something like that, I think would be workable.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Amber?
Yeah, two things. I'm just going to echo Gracia and Catherine in terms of thinking comprehensively about what policies we recommend. And I think Thrivance actually gave us a gift with that, because in their report, they have these different different organizations, different ways they've organized the policies based on what priorities you have. And so we have to find a way to kind of take what the public say that they want to see, and then look at what can go with those policies, what's recommended gets bundled with those policies, so that we are recommending something more comprehensive rather than just a piece of this and a piece of that. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is that I think it's important we make sure that whatever we recommend, we are aware of anything that the city has that is some version of that, where they could say, oh, we have that already. I'm thinking specifically of Thrivance is recommending a much more universal right to counsel. The city has the eviction protection program, which is very limited, and we just need to be strategizing around how to anticipate that kind of pushback, to make sure that these much more comprehensive policies are put in place.
All right. Sophia? Did you capture that?
I did. Thank you.
Yep. Next, I'm gonna pivot to Richard, because I think he has his hand raised before you, Morgan. We'll circle back with you.
Is it possible to put the list of 10 items up on the screen?
Yes, we can do that for you.
Yes, we can.
Did you have a starting point?
Who, me? No, I just
Richard.
couldn't remember what everything was. There were a couple of them. For example, the issue with condos, that there's a great amount of state law and city ordinances that already address tenant tenant, if they're condos that are rented, tenant rights, first right to purchase. If they're condo conversions, there's reports that have to be done by the owner on an annual basis, so on and so forth. So it seems like with some of these recommendations anyway, the Thrivance organization really doesn't have a handle on what the existing laws are. So that's one that kind of jumped out at me, because I've done or built apartment complexes and had them subdivided into condos before anybody lived there. Never done anything beyond that, because there's a huge shortage of apartments, and people in Fresno don't like condos that much. So it's kind of seems to me that it's on the top 10. It's kind of useless. That's just my opinion.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for sharing, Richard. We appreciate that.
Okay.
Morgan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Payne. So I have a couple questions. I'm glad that you put this this screen up, because I don't really see much help with businesses, even though I thought anti-displacement was supposed to include businesses. Or some of them were kind of, let's just say, a little vague. Maybe it does include businesses, or maybe it doesn't. Does a community land trust ever have businesses in there? That's my first question. And then, I've heard a lot of stuff about like the homeless and, these type of things that we're doing, I guess, or it will displace the homeless, but finding a solution to that that's a priceless question, I guess. I guess my question for that part would be, have we got any feedback from the homeless community to what displacement means and what they can do to help people that will get displaced? I don't know if I even made sense on that, but those are my two questions.
Oh, okay. Sophia?
Yeah, I think I can respond to that a little bit. Morgan, it's true. There aren't a lot of policies here that specifically call out merchant and business displacement. I do think in some kinds of community land trusts it is possible to include businesses, small businesses. And of course, the local hire, relates to economic development, certainly. But you're right. I mean, it's an observation. There's not a lot of merchant protection in these top 10 that I see. And with your question about the homeless, I know that we have had some homeless advocates that have participated in this effort and have given us their input. So we have heard from advocates, but I think your point is well taken.
All right. Morgan, did you still have your hand raised?
No, I guess that's all I have to say at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Nguyen.
Yes, hi. My question is directed to staff. So this report has been completed since June, so that's about 5 months. So in those 5 months, has staff gone through these and looked at, vetted them to see, what is the applicability of certain existing laws or existing programs, or as I think it was Amber who called out the eviction right to counsel, there's something, but it's got limitations. So this could potentially mean something else. Has there been any kind of vetting of all of the priorities that could help inform the commission on how to prioritize, or at least get more information? And maybe you all did and made it part of the public comment process, but I would like to know if if there's actually been any homework, so to speak, on any of these recommendations on your part.
All right. Thank you for your question, Ms. Nguyen. I'll allow staff an opportunity to respond.
Yes, thank you. I'd say that process is underway right now. So staff is looking at these, and if you would like to, what I'm hearing, I think from you and from perhaps Amber and other commenters, is that you would like to see a sort of a vetting of these policies, at least the top priorities and how they compare to existing city programs. And please, actually, our next item on the agenda is, preparing for making the recommendation. So if there's a request for staff, I would love to hear, all from all of you that have concerns and would like more information than what will be provided by Thrivance. If you want more information about staff programs, we can certainly provide that.
All right. Ms. Nguyen, did that address your question? I don't see you anymore.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
okay,
for now.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like we have another hand up. Amber, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a question that I forgot. I'm sorry. This is for staff. In the final report of the public comments, will we know what neighborhoods those comments came from? Will that be reported out as well?
Are you asking based on relative to zip code or the commenter's actual address or what have you?
Zip codes would be fine, just knowing what regions of the city the comments are coming from. I just want to know how many of the comments are coming from the project areas.
All right. Project area meaning, can you elaborate a little bit for clarity?
Yeah, so the area focus for the task force, so Southwest Fresno, Chinatown, downtown.
So our recommendations are for the entire city.
Sure.
The focus area for TCC is Chinatown, downtown, but our final recommendations will be for the entire city to adopt.
Yes. Yeah, I just want to know if we would get that breakdown in the report.
Okay. Sophia, will there be disaggregated data analysis available based on zip code from commenters?
I would need to check with Thrivance on that. I believe that there is some disaggregation based on zip codes, but you all know that 93706 is a very large zip code. But I can check with Thrivance and respond on that. And I'm hearing behind that, as much information as you can get about where comments are coming from. It sounds like that's desired.
Yep. Okay. Amber, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I just think it would be helpful to just get more context behind the comments.
All right. Thank you so much. Grecia, I saw your hand up, but I saw you put it down. So did you have one more thing to say? Did you have another question?
I was just echoing what Amber said, and specifically like having, like, to the extent possible, like like a more comprehensive look of like where the answers are coming from. So like whether they're landlords, renters, homeowners, etc. That would be really helpful.
Gotcha. If there are no other questions, I guess I'll make some final comments. I just had, in line with some of what we've heard already, to just kind of echo from the chair seat, relative to, I guess, slide 6, where you talked about environmental justice and emergency management planning. I do know that the state law does provide guidance to the city on its environmental justice plan. And then recognizing that LAFCO does adopt all of the local jurisdictions and the municipalities, their emergency management plans. So I see a conjunction here. So I don't have a lot of clarity on if it's one of the same or if it's a little bit different than what we're already doing. And so just to reinforce some of what I've heard tonight relative to other guidance and state policies and laws. I think I heard it from Angie and from Richard, and I think Amber as well. Just how does the comprehensive guidance that the state provides in terms of laws and regulations overlap with this particular report? And then I would also reinforce that something I would like to see as we move to the final stages of this adoption of this report is a feasibility study or a financial impact report relative to a total cost to implement this report. Is it going to be, $5 million, or is it going to be $35 million? Right? I don't know, but just to take a look at it from the lens of financial impact and what it would cost to eradicate anti-displacement in our community based on the expertise that we've brought in from the Thrivance group. And what does that financial impact plan look like? So if it is over the course of 10 years, is that an allocation from our operating budget of $10 million, $5 million? I don't know. But I would like to see some type of analysis or something that gives guidance relative to the full adoption of the plan. Not just the top 10 recommendations, but if we're going to send this plan to the council in its entirety, what does that look like? And that is all I have, and I'm happy to close out the meeting. If there are no final thoughts, all hearts and minds are clear.
Actually,
all right.
my heart and mind isn't clear because we have 3 more items.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. I mean, relative to this particular item, if there's nothing else. Okay. So item 7, procedures for recommending here to stay priorities.
Thank you. Let me move this forward. So I think we've already touched on this quite a bit. You will have a document with 46 different policy recommendations in it, and you will have a report in your hands about what the public said about the report. And so wanted to give you a chance to discuss what else you might need or how you wanted to structure your recommendation. Staff was recommending that you prioritize the top 10. If you felt that 10 wasn't the right number and you wanted to prioritize additional policies, of course, that's going to be up to you. My thinking, though, is about strategy, strategic thinking. How can you select policies that work well together and address a number of issues? So this is your opportunity to discuss that further if needed. We also offered up at the last meeting, and I offered up again, the Anti-Displacement Task Force resolution that created this board as additional criteria or guidance for determining your final recommendations. And then our guidance to you would be come prepared to recommend 10 priorities. And so this slide you saw in the last presentation, it just is summarizing the resolution, why the Anti-Displacement Task Force was established, and who it is meant to serve and where. And of course, that is both the TCC project area and citywide. And so we offer that as a guidepost, and that was really, let me go back. So that was that item. It sounds like you've already discussed a little bit what approach you want to take for making your recommendation. I want to make sure I understand any additional information that you would like staff to provide. What I've heard so far is an assessment of existing city staff programs that are similar to some of the recommendations, and maybe highlighting the differences so that you can work with that. I did hear Chair Payne say that he would love to have a financial impact plan. I don't know that we can commit to that. I think a full financial estimate of the cost of all 46 policies would be beyond the scope of something that staff could do between now and the next meetings. And it might even be difficult to do for the top 10. That might be something that would need to be contracted out to an expert. I'd have to check, but I hear that. So is there anything else, any additional information or that you need from staff or that you want to discuss about your process for recommending?
Yeah, I think just to summarize some of what I heard from folks, there's a strong desire to move forward essentially the entire report for consideration and not just solely the top 10 recommendations. And then looking at the comparative analysis of existing programs in the city and how they might align, and then any state guidance relative to current law that provides guidance to the city and any anti-displacement. And then I think, I cited an example for sure relative to the city's environmental justice plan. And so I'm going to pause, and I see I have some raised hands, and I'm going to call on Dr. Forbes. You're muted. There you go.
So I'm sorry, this is going to come out confusing, but I'm want to try to make it clear. So there's requirements of the funding stream that you adopt like 3 policies for sure, right? So I think we need to have like a strategy about how we're proposing that and what principles we're going to use to guide us in making them, because part of what we have is, like as Chair Payne is pointing out that, we don't have this cost part, but we also don't have the number of people who would benefit from such a policy, right? And so we need to think about, are we proposing for the widest, what principles are we using to also be strategic in those top 3? Because you could have one of the top 3s be super low cost, and I don't want to do that as a task force because that's too easy, right? So I mean, if we kind of use the state mandate in our favor to push for the policies that may not be, that may be more expensive, right? So that's one thing. And then the other thing I think is I really want to echo what the question that Morgan had about making sure that the businesses are included, even though a lot of this is about residents. We heard a lot before we started meeting, when we actually met in person, we were hearing from businesses. And so we've got to figure out, like, how do we, like, it is equitable to send it out for community comment, but then there are people who just haven't done it, right? And so how do we think about equity in that space, or equity in that sense in terms of the policy proposals? So I guess when we get like further along, I think part of what we want to use to kind of convince the city to adopt some of these is also knowing the numbers of people who are going to benefit. And some of that is pretty easy. Like some of that would be pretty easy. Some of it may be difficult. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I'm glad that you highlighted Member Morgan's comments relative to small business support. I think that's something that we've said collectively with it through a general consensus throughout this entire process from day one is what safety nets will we have for our small and micro business owners, and then ensuring through the recommendations that we provide, while we don't see them in the top 10 relative to small business support, are explicitly spelled out in the top 10. I think that's another reason that there's a really strong desire from the task force to move forward all of the recommendations. And I think we've heard that from the public as well tonight. But I'm going to pause as staff captures much of what we're saying. And then I saw a hand from Richard and then Member Fuentes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Mike, I have a question. Are we limited in our recommendations to the city council to only those items that are in the report that Thrivance did?
Our public comment that we're opening for the public is in reference to the Here to Stay report. If there is something that is missing or something that should be added, this is the opportunity for the public to weigh in through public comment as we issue the final report.
I'm not sure that answer. I don't think you answered my question.
You want to restate your question and provide a little clarity?
So my question is, if I feel that there is a policy that would work better than 40, I bring that forward.
Yes, you can.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. All right. Member Fuentes?
Yes, thank you. So I just want to reiterate what Sophia said, that the entire Thrivance report is going to go to City Council. And so they're going to receive all 46 of the policy recommendations. So I think we as a task force do need to come up with our own set of priorities to recommend to the City Council. Otherwise, I think we are shirking our responsibility as a task force if we just say, here's the entire report, City Council, run with it. Because I can guarantee that they're not going to pass all 46 of the policies. So I think if we want to be strategic in the way that Catherine suggested, I think we need to decide what are, for example, our top 10 priorities. And those could be the exact same priorities that the Thrivance group has recommended, or it could be, 7 or 8 of those and, 2 or 3 other policies that either they provided in their report or that we've come up with as a task force. But in terms of guiding principles, I do agree with Catherine's comment that I think our guiding principles should be, what policy do we think will have the greatest impact? One, because we don't have an estimate of how much these policies will cost, so we don't really know that. And 2, I think that's something that I think that's a focus that will be more on the City Council in terms of approving budgets. And so I think our value add as a task force is to say, okay, what policies do we think will have the largest impact in terms of promoting anti-displacement throughout the city? So those are just my thoughts going into this next meeting where we do come up with some policy recommendations as a task force.
No, thank you for that. I will definitely take that under advisement, Member Fuentes. I appreciate your comments. If there are no other comments, we will move forward to the next agenda item. Staff, you have your directions. And again, happy to follow up in executive committee to give a more granular focus.
Thank you, Chair Payne, and thank you all for the input. Did someone want to speak? Thought I heard something.
No, I didn't hear anything, and I don't see anything in the comments. So
Okay.
now we'll move to next steps.
All right, so I just wanted to close with a timeline. So we've finished the public comment period. It ended on September 10th. We are now looking at, see if my notes will hold here. We're looking at scheduling the next meeting either November 18th, which is a Thursday, or Wednesday, December 1st in the evening at 6 p.m. It's because we want to make sure that we are able to give enough lead time for the public and the task force members to review that final Thrivance report. And I know that Task Force Member Fuentes was not here when we talked about those dates. So quickly, Task Force Member Fuentes, do November 18th and December 1st work for you in the evening, 6 p.m., one of those dates?
Yes, November 18th would work. December 1st would not. There's a planning commission meeting, I believe, scheduled.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But November 18th would work.
Okay. My hunch is that we may have to do some kind of a doodle poll and work on what that December backup date is if we aren't going to make the November 18th one. So just stay tuned for that. We are planning on bringing this report to the Planning Commission in December. The December 15th meeting is what we are targeting for at this moment, and then bringing it to City Council in January. And then I have just policy development and adoption as sort of very fluid here, but I think the council will give us direction on that, and I'm sure they'll want to, move forward with some of the priorities that you recommend. So, any questions on that? Okay. We've got 4 minutes left for unscheduled oral communication.
All right. Drew, any public commenters with raised hands that would like to give testimony?
I currently see none, Chair Payne. Oh, I have one. Sorry, one just popped up. Michael N. Lewis.
All right. Unscheduled oral communication. Go ahead, Ms. Lewis. State your name and address for the record.
Michael and Lewis, 2519 South Lotus Avenue, Southwest Fresno. I actually want to make a point about something that was said earlier. First of all, to the developers, I mean no disrespect or any harm, but unless you have property or have been living over in Southwest Fresno, Chinatown, or downtown, you would know that there's a huge problem in trying to get affordable, decent housing for people who don't necessarily qualify for Section 8 or anything like that. There are people who historically want to stay in these areas because this is where they're familiar. And just to be able to let them stay there and to be able to know that they can lay their heads down on a meager salary and still have their homes when they come home from work or year to year would be a great benefit. Secondly, I'd like to echo what Morgan said, because in doing some of the other meetings and planning, one of the problems that was going on that which took the Fulton Mall such a long time to be redeveloped was the fact of a lot of small businesses were afraid that if big businesses came in and took it, that they would be displaced. And we're losing a lot of small businesses in general all over the city. And I would like to see something that helps them to retain their businesses. So that's my comment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Lewis. We appreciate it. Your comments have been recorded for a public record. Mr. Wilson, any other public testimony or public commenters?
I see
in the
none,
queue?
Chair. I see none, Chair Payne.
All right, thank you. We will close unscheduled oral communication, and that brings us to a close. I'd like to thank the task force members and the public for investing their time tonight, all of staff for getting us here and putting this meeting together. And we look forward to finalizing. I believe we had finalized our December meeting date, but it looks like after further discussion, there'll be some reconsideration with the doodle poll, and staff will get that to you. And I want to thank everybody for their time this evening, and happy Halloween. We are done. And I got us out on time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.